Thank you everyone for joining us here today to talk about NECTAR's latest report, Future of the Industry 2024, Plant-Rich Meats. We have the next hour together, so here's a brief agenda of what we're going to go through. We're going to briefly reintroduce NECTAR and our insights partner, Palate, and then we're going to introduce Food System Innovation's newest employee, Tim Dale, who will talk a little bit about plant-rich meat. We're then going to explore some of the data from our report. And then finally, we're going to save some time for questions. So if you missed my little spiel at the beginning here, please use the Q&A function for those questions throughout the call instead of the chat. You can find the Q&A in the little 3 shape icon at the bottom right-hand part of your screen. Awesome. So for those of you who haven't met, I'm Caroline, the director of NECTAR, which is a philanthropic initiative of food system innovations that's working to bring an evidence base to taste and democratize access to sensory data. So we started NECTAR back in June because there's been an influx of products, plant-based products to the market over the last few years, but not an objective way to evaluate the sensory performance of those products. And because we know that taste is a primary driver of consumer purchasing, understanding taste is really critical to the success of this industry. So we founded NECTAR to conduct really large-scale blind taste tests of plant-based products, starting with plant-based meat, and then to release the results of those studies through an annual Taste of the Industry report, and we published our first one back in June. And again, the main reason we're doing this is that taste is the biggest barrier to repeat purchase for consumers, especially when it comes to plant-based meat in particular. So at NECTAR, we have 3 operational pillars, which are learn, support, and celebrate. So we're learning by conducting these rigorous, large, blind sensory panels for alternative protein products. We're then operationalizing this data to help brands accelerate their own product development. And lastly, we're using this data to celebrate really great tasting products and hopefully drive broader market adoption. So I'm joined today by Alex Weissman, who's the CEO and founder of Palate Insights. Palate is an agile, authentic product feedback platform helping sustainable food brands build better products faster. And NECTAR has partnered with Palate for our Future of the Industry report, as well as our forthcoming Taste of the Industry 2025 study that we're kicking off this fall. I'm also joined by Tim Dale, who's our newest employee at Food System Innovations. Tim joined in September as the Category Innovation Director for Plant-Rich Meats. And prior to joining FSI, Tim was at 2 plant-based meat companies, Prime Roots and Impossible Foods. So he's bringing his marketing expertise to FSI to help support and grow the emerging category of plant-rich products. So I'm now actually going to turn it over to Tim to give us a brief introduction to plant-rich meats and how we defined this category for the report we're going to be talking about today. So thanks so much, and over to Tim.
Awesome. Thank you, Caroline. And thank you all for joining us. I'm very excited to talk through this exciting new category of plant-rich meats. One quick comment before we hop into it on nomenclature. So we understand that this category is pretty young, and as such, nomenclature can be a bit fluid at this moment. As we gain more data on consumer insights and industry reaction, we expect to update our point of view on the category name. However, for the purposes of the conversation today, our working category name is plant-rich meat. So what is plant-rich meat and how are we defining it? At Food System Innovation, we're defining plant-rich meat as meat products that combine conventional animal protein with significant proportions of plant-based ingredients to deliver improved nutrition and reduced environmental impact while preserving or even enhancing the taste of conventional meats. So we are at a pivotal moment in our journey towards more sustainable eating. While alternative proteins have made incredible strides in the past decade or so, we know that the adoption of these products needs to accelerate in order to meet our growing environmental challenges. At just 1% market share right now, plant-based meat and seafood have not captured the mainstream on the time frame that we have hoped. While we know that there's a lot going into that market share number, what we do know from research is that these products have struggled on taste perceptions, health perceptions, as well as price, and even political and social divisions. Plant-rich meats create a middle ground that is both familiar and delicious. They have the opportunity to overcome these consumer barriers because they're grounded in a product that consumers already know and love, animal meat, while also offering secondary benefits of health and environmental benefits that are unassailable from competing interest groups. So a good way to think about this category is by comparing it to hybrid cars, which are paving the way for electric vehicles by offering familiar and convenient transitions to consumers. Similarly, plant-rich meats are offering an incremental change to consumers' diets without giving up the products that they know and love, offering environmental benefits today while bridging towards a broader dietary and industrial change tomorrow. We believe that the market opportunity here is large and relatively untapped. Flexitarians represent a growing, powerful consumer base. And though definitions may vary from source to source, up to 72 million Americans households can qualify as flexitarians. They are reducing their meat consumption in some form or fashion. That's significant because right now the household penetration for plant-based meat and seafood is hovering around 15%, indicating that there is potentially a lot of headroom and growth opportunities for this category. As such, there's business opportunity for brands, especially those brands that are invested in plant-based offerings. By moving into this space, brands can expand their portfolio, meet a wider range of consumer preferences, and open up new revenue streams. For animal meat brands, this may mean meeting ESG goals without abandoning core products. And for plant-based meat brands, this could provide a strategic foothold in the mass market that aligns with their mission while also addressing those key consumer barriers. Regarding environmental impact, the inclusion of meat might seem counterintuitive to some advocates. However, we believe that the incremental demand and substitution for plant-rich meats will offset the environmental externalities caused by the inclusion of animal products. We believe that these products have the ability to expand the market, break the binary for what consumers view as meat, and benefit the entire food system. So to wrap it up in summary, plant-rich meats represent this opportunity to accelerate our adoption of a more sustainable food system. They are familiar, delicious, and address key consumer barriers around taste, price, and health. There's a market opportunity and also new revenue opportunities. Ultimately, we believe that the broader adoption of plant-rich meats will deliver meaningful environmental benefits on a large scale.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tim. So before we dive right into the plant-rich meat research, I wanted to take a moment to explain why we decided to research plant-rich meat in the first place. So as I mentioned earlier, NECTAR released our inaugural report in June, which was Taste of the Industry 2024, that evaluated the sensory performance of 45 plant-based meat products across 5 categories. And in that report, we found that in the burger category, a plant-rich or blended burger actually outperformed the leading plant-based burger in taste. And in fact, the plant-rich burger was the only burger that came within a 1-point liking score of the animal-based burger benchmark. So you'll see that reflected here in the blue dot. And from this research, we saw that there was real taste potential for plant-rich products, which is why we were led to publish the Future of the Industry Plant-Rich Meat Report that we're going to be discussing for the remainder of our time today. So Future of the Industry Plant-Rich Meat is the largest publicly available sensory analysis of plant-rich meats. We tested 22 products across 9 categories with 1,192 omnivores in San Francisco. For this study, participants actually came to a restaurant location in San Francisco instead of a lab setting, and products were prepared using a flat top or deep fryer according to manufacturer instructions, and they were also seasoned according to manufacturer instructions. We also served products in full builds. So for example, burgers were served in buns, and participants were allowed to apply condiments as long as they did it equally across all of the products on their tray. Each participant was given up to 4 samples and asked to fill out a survey for each product, and everything was blind. So each participant tasted at least one 100% plant-based product, one 100% animal-based product, and then one or more plant-rich products. So here's a summary of the 9 categories we tested, the number of participants that tried each category, the animal-based benchmarks that we used, and these were selected by choosing the highest selling product by volume in the category, and then the number of plant-rich products that we tested in each category. So you'll notice that categories like burgers had a lot more products in them than things like unbreaded chicken patty or steak. Here's a brief summary of the nomenclature that we used in the report. So the plant-rich leader is the highest scoring product in overall satisfaction in the category. And the plant-rich average is the averaged satisfaction scores across all plant-rich products that were tested in a given category. And then again, we want to note that we tested a 100% plant-based benchmark and a 100% animal-based benchmark in every category as well. So for the next 10 or so minutes, we're going to go through some of the key findings of this report. And the first reason that we're really excited about this research is because the concept of plant-rich meat is really resonating with consumers. So we're going to make this a bit interactive for you guys this morning. So my first question is a poll, and you should see this pop up on your screen. If you're not seeing that, you can again find it in the little shape icon. But the first question here is, what percentage of survey respondents do you think found plant-rich meats interesting or extremely interesting as a concept? And we'll give you a few seconds to respond here. Okay, Max, you want to go ahead and publish the results of that? Awesome. So the correct answer is 74%. So congrats to any of you that chose correctly. So our research showed that 3 out of 4 Americans surveyed were interested in the concept of plant-rich meats. So this was a really promising result, given that we were introducing a novel concept to these consumers. And so diving a bit deeper, who do you think this concept of plant-rich meat appealed to most? Flexitarians or omnivores? Oh, it's pretty even here. Okay, we'll give you one more second to respond. I see a question about flexitarians versus omnivores. So omnivores are people that report eating meat regularly, or like very frequently, and flexitarians are people that report eating meat rarely. Okay, wow. So we're completely tied on this question. And the correct answer is actually from our report, perhaps surprising, but we found that the concept of plant-rich meat was more appealing to omnivore consumers who were significantly more likely to purchase a plant-rich product over a plant-based one. So this really represents an opportunity for plant-rich products to appeal to a much broader market than plant-based products could on their own. We also saw that when it comes to purchase intent, omnivores are more likely to purchase plant-rich meats than 100% plant-based products. We see that in these dots here. So the blue dot is the plant-rich product. We're seeing that outpace the green dot, which is the plant-based product. But we also see that conceptually, plant-rich meat is still meaningfully behind this gray dot, which represents the animal products. So consumers say they would buy animal meat, but they report that they probably would buy plant-rich meat. So another exciting finding from this report, however, is that in 2 categories, plant-rich meat products actually did outperform 100% animal-based products in taste. So my question for you is, in which 2 categories did this happen? Plant-rich meat products outperformed the animal-based products. I'll give you one more second here. Okay, let's close that poll. And yes, so whoever said burgers and chicken nuggets is actually correct. So in those 2 categories, the plant-rich leader actually surpassed the animal-based benchmark in overall liking. And in fact, this was also true for the plant-rich average at taste parity with the animal-based benchmark for those 2 categories as well. So we see here these blue dots for plant-rich outpacing the gray dots for animal-based. We also found that leading plant-rich products generally surpass the leading plant-based products. So this was the case in 6 of the 8 categories that we tested. One of the categories didn't have a plant-based leader, so that's why we're looking at 8 instead of 9. But you'll see here for the most part that the blue dots representing the plant-rich products are outpacing the green dots representing the plant-based products. So this shows that not only are plant-rich products resonating with consumers more than plant-based products on a conceptual basis, but the sensory data is actually confirming this preference as well. So to zoom back out for a second, the second reason we're really excited about this research is that it gives plant-rich producers some clear direction on marketing by shining light on what are the true drivers of consumer interest in this category. So time for another poll. What do you think consumers found to be the most appealing mix of animal-based product and plants in a plant-rich meat product? Okay, we'll close that poll up. And yes, you guys are on it. So congrats to those of you who guessed correctly. But when we asked people what ratio of plants to animal product do you prefer, they had a strong preference for 50-50 ratios of meat to vegetables in these products. And this shows us that consumers prefer a balanced mix of plant and animal ingredients. And I think it emphasizes a real preference for familiarity. It's much easier to conceptualize a product that's a 50-50 blend than one that might be 90% plant-based, 10% animal fat. So in these 50-50 blends, which ingredients do you think consumers wanted the animal-based product to be blended with? Give you one more second to respond here. Okay, go ahead and close that poll. Yeah, you guys are totally right. So when we asked people, what would you prefer that meat be blended with in plant-rich products? They said primarily mushrooms or savory vegetables, which you guys ranked in the correct order here. So again, we're seeing that preference for familiarity, really wanting to know firsthand the ingredients that the meat is being blended with. And conceptually, they prefer ingredients that they understand, like whole mushrooms, instead of more novel ingredients like mycelium that require some more explanation. And in the same vein, participants were most interested in plant-rich meatballs, sausages, and burger patties. And these are formats of meat that are historically blended products to begin with. So it shows us again that consumers really value familiarity when trying out this new category of plant-rich products. It's a lot harder to conceptualize a plant-rich product in categories like steak or cold cuts, which are more directly cut from the animal, than it is to understand a sausage or a meatball. Okay, so we also found that location matters. So where do you think consumers are most likely to try a plant-rich product? Okay, we'll close that out. And yep, exactly right. So the correct answer is restaurant. People are more likely to try plant-rich meat in a restaurant setting than at home. And not only are they more likely to try plant-rich meat in a restaurant setting, but they're both more likely to return and more likely to recommend restaurants that offer plant-rich meats. So this presents a huge opportunity for food service to differentiate itself and improve customer attraction and retention. You're really lowering the barrier to entry for these products in restaurant settings. When we looked at drivers, we found that sustainability and health were cited 2 times more often than any other drivers for interest in plant-rich meats. And we took away from this that marketing for plant-rich meat should really focus on the health benefits of these products, especially increased protein and reduced cholesterol, as we know that health is a key purchasing criteria for some consumers. On the flip side, consumers said that cost and flavor are the primary roadblocks to purchasing plant-rich meat, with 45% saying low affordability decreased their interest in plant-rich meat and 43% saying that it was not tasty. Which leads me to my last point on the key takeaways here, which is that success for plant-rich meat is not guaranteed. We have some really exciting data on the taste potential of this category, but plant-rich meat still has significant taste barriers to overcome if it's going to gain mainstream adoption with consumers. And that's why investment in R&D really matters. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alex Weissman from Palate Insights to talk a little bit more in depth about the key R&D opportunities we found for plant-rich meats.
Thanks, Caroline, and thanks to everyone for joining. Excited to kind of walk you through some of the key high-level findings from the report on the R&D side of things. So just to orient us a little bit to the data on the page, if you look at the left-hand side of the page where you see those scales, that's going to show you the average or mean liking. And then on the right-hand side where you see those bars, this might be the easiest thing to see just purely based on the size of the bar. But the green is the share of consumers who were strong likers, so people who rated like very much or like. And the red are consumers who are detractors or dislikers who rated some form of dislike, as far as dislike somewhat, dislike or dislike very much. And the white is everything in the middle. So I think if we go ahead and flip through the next page and just focus on this performance of the plant-rich average, which is on that left-hand side, versus the animal, which is on that right-hand side, just simply look at the size of the bars, we can see that there's further R&D is certainly still needed in this space. And so while there's strong encouraging signs, animal products had 1.5 to 2 times more promoters than the plant-rich average in most categories tested. But I think ultimately we're still very excited about the potential of this category, and that's because of the emergence of some of these leader products. So it was amazing to see certain leaders differentiate themselves from the average, where we saw leading products emerge in several categories, which were having 75% increase in promoters and 1.5 to 3 times fewer detractors than the plant-rich average product. And I think that shows us the importance of continuing to invest in R&D and finding ways to achieve parity with the animal or even surpass it. And these are the kinds of things that are going to matter a lot as this category is building its reputation and trying to overcome some of those perceived taste barriers that Caroline, showed from our results, and that consumers are assuming will be products of this category. But in fact, we're seeing that some leader products can emerge, and shows us that the category in general needs to work to catch up to these leaders. We did some research to try to figure out, okay, for the leading products, what made leading products great. And so this is a graph comparing the performance of the leading products across all categories with the average product in every category. So the y-axis is the impact on liking. And so, for instance, all of these dots were various attributes that consumers could select to describe a product they tasted. So, for instance, if you look towards the middle of your screen, you'll see bland, kind of in the red there. So that tells us that when consumers selected a product as bland, it correlated with about a 1-point drop in liking of the product. So blandness leads to about a 1-point decline in liking. Whereas the x-axis is the net prevalence. And so that's the share that we're selecting that attribute for the leader minus the share that selected it for the plant-rich average. So everything on the right-hand side are attributes that consumers found to be more prevalent in leading products, and everything on the left-hand side is attributes that consumers found to be more prevalent in plant-rich average. So if we look towards the bottom left, you'll see that weird aftertaste and off flavors were the top things reducing liking for the plant-rich average products, and that's going to be the top thing to focus on from a flavor perspective. If you're the average plant-rich brand, is how do we get weird aftertaste and off flavors out of our products? So that's the number one thing declining liking for average products today. Versus if you look towards the top right, we see, meat flavor, savory, fatty flavor. These were the things that were different and distinct about leading products and had the biggest overall impact on their liking. So as you think even just the very high level around what are the opportunities and what do we want to focus on in this category, you want to increase that meat flavor, savoriness, fatty flavors, and reduce weird aftertastes and off flavors. We did the same analysis for texture as well. So again, looking towards the top right, we can see that the things that were increasing liking for leading products were juiciness, the ability to hold together, or firmness. And that was where some of these leading products were differentiating themselves. I think juiciness in particular really sticks out as something that was having a large positive impact on liking, and was much more prevalent in leading products. And then all the way on the left-hand side, you could see mushiness really showing up as a weakness for the average plant-rich product. And so if we think about texture improvements, I think we're going to want to find ways to increase juiciness, firmness, and the ability to hold together while reducing that mushiness quality. So I think, we encourage you to read the report to learn more. That's just a very high level aggregated snapshot, but we across all categories, we did a much deeper analysis, and there were 2 new types of analysis that we included in our report that I just want to walk you through quickly. This is a high level snapshot for the burger category, but we compared, you can see for those attributes that were just on the previous page, we asked consumers, please select all attributes that describe this product. And then along the top, we have the different categories: the plant-rich average, the plant-rich leader, the plant-based product, and the animal. And you can see how prevalent those attributes were by category. And so I think even just flipping to the next page here, you can see some of these emerged as distinct for the burger category. So you can start to see where were those products separating themselves. I think interesting to see, for instance, even just looking at the bottom of weird aftertaste and off flavor, this leading plant-rich burger just had far lower percentage in weird aftertaste and off flavor. And you can kind of go through and take a look at that category by category to understand what are the differences between average products and animal products, average products and leading products, or where are we already differentiating against the animal product. And then I think additionally, if you flip through to the next, there's also these penalty analyses done based on the responses to the CATA questions. And so here you can see that same key finding striking through around, beef and savory attributes being the top things that are relevant to consumers and increasing overall liking, whereas when products had off flavors or weird aftertastes, those were declining liking. But you can see that even attributes such as blandness are even more relevant and worth focusing on as well. So I say all that. I know this is just a very brief high-level snapshot, but I think flipping through to the next page, you'll see that we've done a lot of work in this report. And so as Max from Food System Innovations likes to say, I encourage you to pour a big cup of coffee and sit down with us, because we've done this analysis for all 15 categories of products here. We have overall liking ratings split out to capture that overall liking, flavor, texture, appearance, breading when relevant. We looked at purchase intent to understand, attribute by attribute, where are products ahead or behind across different categories. We did jar and penalty analyses on flavor intensity, saltiness, firmness, and that cohesive crumbliness quality from a texture side. And we also did that kata penalty analysis I was just showing you with the prevalence attributes, and as well penalty analyses for flavor, texture, and appearance. So we hope this can provide a really clear roadmap as far as what plant-rich meats need to do to catch up to leading plant-rich products, and what leading products can do to continue to move beyond animal products and achieve taste superiority.
Amazing. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, so to wrap this up, I think, as we've heard, there's a lot of opportunities and a lot to be hopeful about in this category. However, from that R&D section, we still know that there is work to be done, and the category's success is not guaranteed, as Caroline mentioned. So in order to start this category off on the right foot, we'll need some multi-stakeholder collaboration and intentional design principles led and informed by some of that R&D work that Alex just walked us through, in order to deliver the best products possible. At FSI, we intend to support these efforts through continuous market and consumer research, as well as strategic collaboration across some different category friction points, including awareness and education, funding and policy, products, and go-to-market strategy. So if you're involved in the industry, or if you're curious, please reach out to me. I am always happy to collaborate, and looking forward to building this category together.
Thanks so much, Tim. And I just wanted to share a quick word on what's next for NECTAR. So as I mentioned at the top, NECTAR is working on our next annual Taste of the Industry report for 2025. This is a sensory panel that will be evaluating more than 100 products across 15 categories of plant-based meats. And we're recruiting both North American and European brands. We're also going to be expanding testing to do testing in both San Francisco and New York City for this report. So if you have a plant-based meat product that you're interested in having tested, please reach out. We'd love to chat with you. Additionally, based on the results of the Future of the Industry report and the Taste of the Industry report, NECTAR is going to be hosting a formal awards ceremony in which we will celebrate the best tasting products in each category. So we're anticipating this to happen sometime around early April in 2025. So stay tuned for more information there. And lastly, we're exploring topics for our next Future of the Industry report. So we're planning to do some sensory studies in the Asia Pacific region, and potentially to look at new categories like cheese or seafood. So if you are a researcher or you have a particular interest in a certain category, please reach out, because you have the potential to influence where we go next. So look forward to collaborating on that. And lastly, we're going to open it up here for Q&A in just a second. So please add your questions to the Q&A box if you haven't already. But before that, just wanted to say there are lots of ways to get involved with our work here at NECTAR and FSI. So we'll be following up with the slides and a recording of this webinar and all of our contact information after today's call. So look out for that via email. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Max, who's going to help us field some questions from the Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Caroline. There are some great questions in here. As a reminder, if anyone's looking for the Q&A, there's a little button on the bottom right with a triangle, square, and a circle. Click that. It's for the activities, and you can post a question We have a couple of questions about from folks asking about whether Nectar looks at price or health or nutrition, sort of other purchase drivers.
That's a great question. So for this study, we did not, but for Taste of the Industry 2025, we are going to be looking at both price and health. So we're actually going to be telling consumers the animal-based product costs this much, the plant-based product would cost this much. How does that affect your purchase intent? And same with a nutrition facts panel, showing a nutrition facts panel and asking on purchase intent based on that. So we hope to have more insight there soon, as we know it's a really hot topic for people beyond just taste.
I would say at a really high level, though, we did ask about it conceptually, just based off the concepts of plant-rich meats and what consumers expected to be the things that would increase their interest or decrease their interest. And we know that consumers' ingoing expectation is they expect these products to be healthier, whereas they also expect them, unfortunately, to taste worse and be more expensive. And so those are some of the challenges that we're kind of coming up against and where we need to prove consumers wrong and where we can lean into the things they already believe.
How were these products created or selected? Where did we find these plant-rich products to test?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's an emerging category. We set out to try to find these products the world over as best we could. And shipping ended up being a bit of a challenge for procurement. So these are products that are available in retail or food service today. So we were not testing any prototype or benchtop products. And so, yeah, Max and the team at FSI and Palate did their best to sort of scour the internet for these products and include them in this research. But it's definitely not a comprehensive list. And we've since learned that there are many more products in Asia. And so that's why we're interested in doing an Asian-specific test on blended products in the coming year as well.
Terrific. There's a great question from Becca, maybe Tim for you, around this idea that incremental demand for these products will just be could potentially be net positive.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a question around how we think about that question, what the assumptions are, and whether we've sort of meaningfully forecasted or analyzed such a theory.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you, Becca. We are in the process right now of doing some research to evaluate that exact question. I think theoretically, we have the assumption that there will be incremental demand for this, given that the adoption right now of plant-based meat it is quite just, a scratch of the surface of total meat category. Therefore, we think that the majority of demand generated is going to be incremental outside and of the plant-based space. So limited, hopefully, cannibalization of other alternative proteins. And also what I'll be digging into is ensuring that it's more of a substitution instead of just an addition to their already, forecasted meat consumption. So more to come there. I think right now it's more of just a conceptual theory, but we should have data by the end of this year to prove it.
Mm. Yeah, and maybe one other quick thing to share there, because we've been thinking about this question deeply and looking for information to inform our point of view. We collaborate with at least one brand that was included in this report, who sells both a 100% plant-based product and a 50-50 blend. And in some cases, both of those products are distributed at the same retailer. And at least anecdotally, the blended 50-50 product has about a 10x velocity over the 100% plant-based product. So if you do the math there, in our minds, that means that there's the incremental demand offsets the use of animal meat, especially if you're assuming that the substitution effect of those products is stronger for the plant-rich versus the fully plant-based. So the displacement opportunity is much higher. But we're engaging with lots of brands to get more information, to get real market information about velocities and the like. And if any of you have data to bear on this question, we would love to see it.
I think one thing that encouraged me from this report too is Palate only works with sustainable food manufacturers. This is something we thought about a lot before doing this work. I know many plant-based food companies have also thought about before moving into this space. But something that really encouraged us was to see these concepts resonating in a much higher level amongst omnivores than plant-based products do. And that to us indicated we have the opportunity to move into a new market and really start to offset meat consumption from omnivores, which is a market that hasn't really been tapped into yet to the same degree by plant-based products.
There was an interesting question from Rose around the reported desire for more 50-50 ratio products and how that translates to the overall satisfaction scores of the products consumed blind with various ratios of plant inclusion. So how did the products that had a 50-50 blend perform, and is this just a conceptual idea that people like the idea of balance, or do these products actually taste better or score higher on overall satisfaction?
I mean, I can tell you quickly that the highest performing product from the test was a 50-50 blended product. In fact, most of the top performing products were 50-50 blends. And so I think that tended to be the camp that most products fell into, but it was encouraging to see some of those 50-50 products outperforming the animal.
And I think just to add that in the our vision as well as in the future that perhaps that conventional animal meat portion could be replaced with cultivated meat, so you could have a full product that was not sourced from animals. But at least to start with, we're seeing that familiarity aspect really matters in terms of 50-50 blends.
I like this. There's a broad question here. What's most surprised you all about this research?
Alex, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I think we learned a lot from the research. I think the thing that surprised me the most was to see that despite the limited investment that has gone into this category, we already had them outperforming 6 out of 8 plant-based categories and outperforming the animal in 2 categories and coming very close in a 3rd category. So I think that was a really exciting finding for me that gave me a lot of hope about this category and the potential for impact. And, of course, there's still a lot of work to be done for the majority of products in this category, but it was amazing to see some leaders emerging despite very little investment overall in the space.
Tim?
Yeah, no, I think I would have to echo Alex. I think another exciting point that I think has been brought up previously is that that difference in how omnivores are perceiving plant-based versus plant-rich. I think that's another really hopeful sign that this category has an opportunity to make a meaningful impact on an environmental basis and, bridge into new audiences.
And yeah, I think I was really excited by the interest and acceptance for whole vegetable-based ingredients. And I think from a marketing perspective, helping plant-rich brands highlight the really premium ingredients that they're using to infuse flavor and taste is really exciting. And that messaging and health benefits also resonate with consumers. I think it just provides sort of a clear pathway. So really excited about helping these brands lean more into that.
And maybe I'll add, I talk to stakeholders across the value chain every day about how we might accelerate the protein transition. And I have to say, I get a lot of no's when I try to promote pilot studies and testing products that are 100% plant-based. This is purely anecdotal, but something that I'm most interested in and excited about is studying just the ideological barriers to scaling 100% products and how much lower they are when you say, oh, these are animal-based products. They just have a meaningful inclusion of plants. And the conversations that I've had, that plant-rich products land better, and there seems to be more of an opportunity for trial, experimentation, product development So we're excited about circumventing some of the very real, I think, ideology and sort of identity-based barriers to broader 100% adoption. There are a couple of questions around market availability and if we see other categories outside of meats as a potential for growth, like dairy, cheese, ready-to-eat meals, etc. So what does this market look like? And are there products outside of meat that people are developing?
Tim, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I will say that blends are, not necessarily a new thing. These things have existed already in market and just maybe at a less significant level of inclusion for plant-based ingredients. So, your lean cuisine, if you look at the ingredients, it has some soy protein isolates in the meat. American cheese is not necessarily completely 100% dairy. So I think there is opportunity to grow in these different categories and make meaningful impacts by increasing, I guess, the inclusion rates for plant-based ingredients. I think also another thing we've seen from different brands is trying to look at different occasions as a way in to get into that middle market. So prepared meals, and I think just looking for convenience is an area that's really ripe for innovation and something that brands should continue to explore.
Awesome. I know that some of these questions are sort of outside of the scope of what Nectar studies or has studied, but there's some questions around, Tim, to your point about how these products aren't necessarily that new, or at least certainly the idea isn't new. I grew up eating meatloaf. Some CPG products have come online, and there's a comment, I think, from someone in the UK said that a couple of years, 2 to 3 years ago, there were more blended or plant-rich products in distribution, and many of them have disappeared. And so some questions just around like what sort of has happened to some of the early movers in this ecosystem, and any idea why these products maybe didn't succeed a few years ago when they were launched?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it's something that we want to continue to dig into. We've seen, also in the US, we've seen some early movers that were introduced by large meat companies fall off the shelf. But we've also seen some products like Purdue Plus, which is a chicken nugget that is geared towards families with kids, do really well and be really successful. So I think that's something that we want to understand is if, how they're marketed and what, job to be done that they were serving for the consumer had any sort of effect on the longevity of the brand. So I think, there's the positioning of the products, the pricing, and just, I guess, sort of the timing of the rollout. I think we're at a different point of time where these products make more sense and there's a clearer space for them in the market. So yeah, a lot more to be done to unpack that.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to marketing and getting the marketing and the messaging right about these types of products. And I think there's some learnings from previous companies to take away as people kind of start to build this category again and socialize it with both the stakeholders like retailers and food service providers, as well as consumers. And we should note as well that we're still trying to determine the best name for this category. So it's a work in progress. If you have thoughts, I know Tim would love to hear them on what's going to resonate.
A couple of last questions for y'all. There's some interesting questions around cost and whether some of the opportunities to accelerate the adoption of these products might just come down to as we know, like all proteins, 100% plant-based products really struggle with being price competitive. And we all know that that's a major barrier. I know Nectar studies taste and looks at the taste credentials of these categories, but do you all think that the adoption of blended products might just simply come down to cost and whether we can develop these products in a way that can actually be at price parity or undercut the cost of 100% animal-based products? I'm thinking in particular of, Nestle this year launched a blended product that's really focused on low cost, kind of a design principle of like meat extension, more so than anything else. How do you all think about the sort of price, taste, drivers, and any insights there?
Yeah, I think price is a principal concern for the category, obviously. But to your point, Max, I think one of the challenges or the third rails of this category could be the perception that the inclusion of plant-based ingredients somehow devalues the product in and of itself. And I believe that in order for this category to be successful, that the plant-based ingredients have to be seen as an enhancer. So these products can't be seen as lower quality meat in any way. It has to be somehow elevated by the inclusion of plant-based meat. So if we start to, devalue just the product based on the inclusion of vegetables, then I think, that's going to be a hard path for startups to follow. And also, I think it sets us up in kind of a tricky spot from a positioning standpoint as well, if we are already sort of fighting from a disadvantaged position.
And I would just add, anecdotally, a number of brands that we tested have stated that they are able to achieve taste parity with animal meat with the inclusion of their plant-based ingredients. So I think to talk about, enhancing, at least achieving parity is a great starting point.
Awesome. I know we only have a few minutes left, and there are a bunch of questions around collaboration, which I feel like is a great topic to end on. It looks like Eric has this question around whether Nectar's working with manufacturers who are interested in developing plant-rich meat products. So what kinds of sort of collaboration opportunities might there be to bring some of this data to producers who want to develop new products? And someone from the UK is excited about collaboration opportunities outside of the US. So tell us, how can we collaborate?
Yeah, great question. So yes, the answer is broadly yes. We want to collaborate with anyone who's interested in either using our data for their own purposes for creating new products or having new products tested. We are working globally. So our tests to date have been US based, but we are planning to do tests in at least the Asia Pacific region to start, and hopefully European region later. We are testing some European products in our US-based tests, though. So if you are UK-based, definitely we would love to include you. And then for specific ingredient companies, I think our data shows some great insights into what those ingredients can offer plant-rich meat brands in terms of value. So specifically for juiciness and thinking about categories like burgers, I think the mushroom ingredients really added a lot of that juiciness to the products. And we see that those have real impacts on liking for the end consumer. So would love to help work with ingredient companies to pinpoint where the opportunities are for their products to shine in these plant-rich products. But Alex, maybe you have some additional thoughts to offer.
Yeah, I think if you only have 2 minutes, I would encourage you to download this R&D one pager. It's available on Nectar's site, and you can send around via email, and it'll outline what are the biggest opportunities and aspects that we need to add to these products. So, where can our ingredient bring more of that, and then also what are the things to reduce. So maybe if your ingredient can hit that savory note without having a weird aftertaste, that's going to be a real elevator for the category. but also if you're thinking about just getting into this space from the perspective, like how do we build our own potential like B2C product? I think I would really encourage you to go category by category and understand what are the opportunities and what can we do to differentiate, and that'll give you a real R&D roadmap of what are the things to focus on in your development and the attributes that you're going to need to be able to have parity and to differentiate and get closer to the animal or beyond.
And you can find us online at nectar.org and fsi.org and palateinsights.com. So again, we'll be sending out our contact information, but we would love to hear from you if you have feedback on how to improve our cities or how we can leverage this data in the future. And thank you all for attending. We really appreciate it, and we'll follow up online.